On a map, Transnistria looks almost too thin to matter, a narrow strip of land running along the eastern edge of Moldova, pressed between the Dniester River and Ukraine. But this small territory has its own capital, its own flag, its own currency, its own police, its own army, and a government that acts as if it runs an independent country. The problem is that almost no one else agrees. Internationally, Transnistria is recognized as part of Moldova, not as a sovereign state. Yet for more than 3 decades, Moldova has not controlled most of it. That contradiction is what makes Transnistria one of Europe's most unusual political realities, not fully a country, not simply a region, and not a temporary crisis that quickly disappeared. Transnistria's location is central to its story. It controls most of the land on the left bank of the Dniester River, the side closer to Ukraine, though it also includes a few areas on the opposite bank. Its capital and largest city is Tiraspol, a place often described through its Soviet-style monuments, administrative buildings, and symbols. Moldova officially refers to the area as the administrative territorial units of the left bank of the Dniester, or simply the left bank of the Dniester. Transnistrian authorities call the territory the Pridnestrovian Moldavian Republic, or Pridnestrovie. Even the names reveal the dispute. For Moldova, it is an administrative region. For the local authorities, it is a state with its own identity and institutions. To understand why Transnistria exists, the story has to go back to the Soviet period. In 1924, the Soviet Union created the Moldavian Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic inside the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. This was not the same as modern Moldova, but it established a Soviet Moldavian political unit east of the Dniester. Later, in 1940, after major territorial shifts during World War II, the Soviet Union combined parts of that earlier autonomous republic with Bessarabia, a region taken from the Kingdom of Romania, to form the Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic. This history mattered because different parts of the new Soviet Republic had different experiences, identities, and connections. The east of the Dniester was more industrialized and more closely tied to Soviet structures. By the late 1980s, the Soviet Union was weakening, and the Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic was experiencing a rise in national movements. Some Moldovans emphasized cultural and linguistic ties with Romania. Debates over language, identity, and possible future independence created anxiety in Transnistria, where many people identified as Russian, Ukrainian, or Soviet, and where political elites feared being pulled toward Romanian influence. In 1990, Transnistrian leaders proclaimed the Pridnestrovian Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic. The idea was that if Moldova left the Soviet Union, or attempted unification with Romania, Transnistria could remain within the Soviet system. But the Soviet Union itself was collapsing, and Moldova declared independence in August 1991. That left competing claims over the same territory. The political dispute soon turned violent. In March 1992, armed conflict broke out between Moldovan forces and Transnistrian forces. The war was short, but it was intense enough to permanently shape the region's future. Fighting centered on control, authority, and whether Moldova could restore its sovereignty over the breakaway territory. Russia's role was crucial, especially because Soviet military assets and troops were already present in the region. The conflict ended in July 1992 with a ceasefire. But the ceasefire did not settle the underlying question: was Transnistria part of Moldova in practice, or a separate political entity? Instead, the fighting stopped while the political dispute remained frozen in place. The ceasefire created a structure meant to prevent renewed fighting. A joint control commission was formed, involving Moldova, Russia, and Transnistria, along with a trilateral peacekeeping force subordinate to that commission. This arrangement helped keep the ceasefire mostly stable, which is one reason the conflict is often called frozen rather than active. But stability did not mean resolution. Moldova continued to claim the territory, Transnistrian authorities continued to govern it, and Russia remained deeply involved. The result was a security arrangement that reduced violence while also locking in the status quo. For residents, this meant living under a de facto government whose long-term international status was never resolved. Inside Transnistria, the local authorities have built many features of a state. There is a constitution, a parliament, a president, courts, police, military forces, a postal system, vehicle registration, and a currency known as the Transnistrian ruble. It has a flag, anthem, and coat of arms. These symbols are not just decoration, they are part of an effort to make de facto independence feel normal and permanent. But recognition is the missing ingredient. A state can control territory and run institutions, yet still remain outside the international system if other countries do not accept its sovereignty. This is Transnistria's central paradox. It functions internally like a state, while legally remaining part of Moldova in the eyes of the world. The population of Transnistria is also part of the story. Its main ethnic groups are Russians, Moldovans or Romanians, and Ukrainians. Many residents hold more than one citizenship. Although Transnistrian citizenship exists locally, it is not widely recognized internationally, so many people also have Moldovan citizenship. Others hold Russian, Romanian, or Ukrainian citizenship. This creates a complicated identity landscape. A person can live in Transnistria, use Transnistrian documents locally, vote in local institutions, and still rely on another passport for travel or legal recognition abroad. This mix of identities reflects the region's history, Romanian connections, Soviet legacies, Ukrainian geography, Russian influence, and Moldovan legal sovereignty all overlap in one narrow space. Transnistria's economy is shaped by the same lack of recognition. Because it is not internationally recognized as a country, trade and customs procedures are complicated. A major turning point came after a 2005 agreement between Moldova and Ukraine. Under that arrangement, Transnistrian companies that wanted to export goods through the Ukrainian border had to register with Moldovan authorities. This was connected to the European Union Border Assistance Mission to Moldova and Ukraine, known as UBAM, which began operating in 2005. The purpose was to improve border management and reduce gray zone trade. For Transnistria, it meant that even companies operating under the breakaway administration often needed Moldovan registration to access broader markets. Transnistria is often grouped with Abkhazia and South Ossetia, two other post-Soviet breakaway territories. All three emerged from conflicts around the collapse of the Soviet Union, all have uncertain recognition, and all maintain friendly relations with one another through the Community for Democracy and Rights of Nations. These territories are sometimes called frozen conflicts because large-scale fighting has stopped, but the political disputes remain unresolved for decades. The term can be misleading, though. Frozen does not mean inactive. It means the conflict is suspended in a tense condition, institutions continue, borders are monitored, negotiations repeat, people build lives, and outside powers remain involved. The dispute is paused, not solved. Russia's role is one of the most important and controversial parts of the Transnistria issue. Russian influence has appeared through security arrangements, political support, citizenship links, and the presence of forces connected to the post-1992 ceasefire environment. Moldova and many European institutions view this as a major obstacle to reintegration. In March 2022, after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine reshaped security debates across Europe, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe adopted a resolution describing Transnistria as a territory under Russian military occupation. That wording reflected a broader European view that the region's unresolved status is not only a Moldovan domestic issue, but part of a larger pattern of Russian power in post-Soviet conflict zones. So why does Transnistria still matter? Because it shows how borders can remain disputed long after wars officially end. It shows how a territory can develop the routines of statehood without gaining recognition. It also shows how local identities, Soviet history, regional security, and great power politics can become locked together. For Moldova, Transnistria is a question of sovereignty and territorial integrity. For Transnistrian authorities, it is a claim to self-rule. For Russia, Ukraine, and Europe, it is tied to security on a sensitive frontier. And for the people living there, it is not an abstract geopolitical puzzle, but everyday life in a place that exists in practice, while remaining unresolved on paper. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.